to the Fifth Factor Show. This is now our second live stream. Really, really appreciate the engagement on that first one. We're back at it with prospects, man. I mean, it's this past week was crazy. We've got a full list of guys we're going to walk through. Today's stream will focus on AJ Debonsa, then Nate Ament, Koa Pete. Then we've got LeBaron Philon. Then we've got JT Toppin, Braden Berries, Pat Nagungba, and Kai Sinak. So not Kai Sinak, Chris Sinak. I'm tripping. My bad. That's what I'll be calling him. But yeah, man, Ahmed, I'm gonna kick it to you. You know, I know the people want to hear about AJ Debonsa. He had after having a career high 43 points.
Yes, sir.
He sees maybe the best 2-point defense in college basketball outside of Michigan. Really struggles, doesn't get to the rim, struggles with a short mid range. There is a sort of expectation for him going into every game, of course, with the way he's talked about in this class. So I think it's time to talk, jump into the film, see what you were thinking about. I'll give my thoughts on it as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, it was an interesting game. Like you said, the anticipation was extremely high. Everyone kind of waiting to see how AJ would perform against an undefeated team. And I think there was a lot to be learned, man. I think there was a lot to be learned about his game and, generally speaking, kind of the issues some of us may have. So let's get this started right here. So I just kind of wanted to go over some of his usage, some of kind of the trappings of AJ's game, and I don't know, areas, I guess, that we want to see him improve potentially. So starting off with, in the first half, BYU definitely looked to get AJ involved in like his preferred play types, which,
for sure,
if you can see here, Arizona switching basically everything 1 through 4. So they had this little flex screen and getting him involved on a mismatch and scoring his little mid range. And with AJ, hold on, let me get. Yeah. And didn't get the switch here on Tobe Awaka, an area AJ is comfortable with. But results are mixed, I mean, these are high variance shots, and obviously Arizona has a lot of positional size. And I think that's what we kind of saw the limitation in his play style. Mm-hmm. And again, this flex screen, this time that he gets a cross match with someone that he wants to see, Anthony Del Orso, but misses the short mid-range, the short corner jumper. And then here, getting a switch on Ivan Karchenkov. I saw Sam Vecini post this, and again, AJ gets a switch here. Dwayne Aristode, same area of the floor. And this is where you kind of see his processing fall apart. Like he throws that pass, that cross-court pass intercepted by Burries, and you see here, totally collapsed. They're totally collapsed on him. Like we have 1, 2, 3 defenders inside the arc, almost like inside the free throw line. And you like to see AJ make this read a little bit quicker, And that's kind of been my issue with AJ so far. It was really interesting in his on-off data versus top 220 teams. So basically the upper third of college basketball. With AJ on the floor, the offense it's not like significantly better or not significantly worse, with him on the floor. I think they're 0.8 points per 100 adjusted for competition better when AJ is off, but it's like the stylistically how they appear or just how they profile is drastically different. And I have the numbers here somewhere. Their assist rate is in the 300s. They're one of the lowest assist rate. I think it was 46% assist rate with AJ on the floor. And it's obvious because they're playing, his preferred style, isolation basketball, him playing in his comfort areas, the mid post in this short, in the baseline, and we're going to get mixed results. I think that's why we're seeing like kind of dramatic swings with AJ versus competition, and not because he's able to exercise these physical advantages more against the Utahs of the world like he did in that 43-point game. But here, Arizona just has so much positional size. I mean, they're switching for a reason. I mean, you have Dwayne Aristode here, who's 6'7". You have Ivan Karchenkov, who's listed 6'7". Waka, undersized center, but still 6'8", and I think he's one of the best offensive rebounders in the country. And then Braden Burry's 6'5", but built like a tank, built like a running back.
There was nowhere for him to mismatch hunt, and I feel like pretty much any drive he was stonewalled, running in the chest. And this is what makes Arizona a great defense, right? Like they're going to sit in the paint, especially if Krivas is on the floor, and he's going to wall off the entirety of the rim. But the fact that AJ was only able to get 2 rim attempts of the 40, well, he had 24 shot attempts, but the 40 true shot attempts he had, right? Even some of those layups where he was drawing fouls, they're 2 or 3 steps outside of the paint, right? Because he's not quite able to force his way towards the rim. And I think there's like a slight balance with when you're playing a team like this, right? Because theoretically speaking, AJ is a 46% shooter from the mid-range, right? And so if you're going to be playing a defense that wants you to try to beat them anywhere but the rim, you do need those counters. But it also can't be the only thing that he's doing. I think to your point as well, like the processing speed in these particular types of scenarios where he has to make these decisions quicker. He can't turn and face and catch and hold for 3 seconds. There were multiple times in that I had it in my notes, like he's waving off guys for ISOs. He's holding the ball for 20, 25 seconds, and they just don't have the movement or the dynamism as an offense to get away with that, I feel like, especially when he has a rough shooting night. So,
yeah, absolutely. And what's so interesting with that on-off data, their rim frequency doesn't really change. It's their 3-point frequency that just goes through the roof with AJ off the floor. Rim frequency in both instances, AJ on or off versus relevant competition, they're in the 300s nationally. They're in the 320s. No matter whether AJ is being featured, and so they're struggling. And you think of AJ as being a downhill athlete, and I think he probably thinks of himself as that. He's drawn a lot of SGA comps early on, but the reality is when he's not able to exercise his size, that physical advantage, he's living in the short mid-range, long mid-range in certain cases. And there was a possession, I actually don't have it clipped, but there was a possession where he was matched up with Koa Pete, and Koa just walled him off really effectively. And it's those kind of bodies he'll see more frequently in the league that I think he's just going to struggle generating those quality rim attempts. And what's so important about this clip, in my opinion, is ideally, the benefit of having AJ on the floor or playing through AJ is you're going to really limit turnovers. And his passing reads have just been, they've left a lot to be desired. So, and like I said, here he throws that interception. Braden Burry's going the other way. And then the second half, they started going in a different direction, kind of using AJ more as a wing. First half, they're running him at a ball screen. They're running him more in middle of the floor ball screen actions, treating him as like a lead initiator, and results were poor. He didn't have a great game overall, but especially in that first half, I think you saw BYU's offense extremely stagnant and the ball just not popping around. And their isolation frequency made a pretty significant leap this season. I think they're 70th percentile in isolation frequency in the country per Synergy, and that's
not how they played last year.
No, not at all.
I do think I can't remember if it was you or someone else, but Kevin Young has built the offense around the skill set of his lead handler, right? And so whether it's Jaeger Demon, where they're going to run a lot of pick and roll, they're going to space. AJ, his strength is theoretically supposed to be in isolation. Also want to shout out the guys who are in the chat. Fizzop said, "Not big bro pulling up on me." He says that in the video. We got Dre in the chat. Tiago has a question, or he has a comment, and so does Gigi Jackson, that I'll get to. And shout out Cam in the Twitter chat as well. Make sure, if y'all have any, it's going to be very interactive. We're going to be breaking down the tape, but if there's any questions about that particular prospect, we want to talk about it. And so I think we'll start with Gigi, because he says that people say AJ's game will translate to playoffs better than Boozer's Maury ball, but I don't know if AJ has SGA ball security. He might have KD team turnover influence. So this is something that I talked about with KD's team turnover influence, right? He's a very assisted mid-range guy. I think that's what distinguishes Devonta, right? He's not going to be a guy who's going to be flying off screens and be reliant on someone to orchestrate that particular advantage. In theory, again, he will be able to get to his spots from that particular, from his own sort of creation ability. So I think, at his peak, or even again, guys are going to have bad games, but as an overall concept, he's a different type of mid-range player than KD. Now, I don't think he's the level of playmaker that we see with the SGA, right? But I think that he's a functionally different type of mid-range guy.
Definitely, yeah. And so I pulled these numbers up. I had them in a Google Doc, and I just had to make sure I got them right. So yeah, with AJ on the floor, their team assist rate 45.6%, 325th in the country. AJ off, their assist rate goes all the way up. This is one of the crazier swings I've seen, man, and especially considering it's a fairly small. I think it's around 200 possessions. Their assist rate with AJ off the floor is 57.5%, which is 66th in the country. So they go from one of the lowest assist rate team, one of the highest ISO ball frequencies in the country, to a team that has the ball moving, has the ball bouncing around, and they do have, some of those movement shooters in Richie Saunders, and Rob Wright can play on and off ball. So yeah, it's tough. And in that last clip, Rob Wright, one pass away of Rob shooting in mid 40s on catch and shoot threes. It's a missed opportunity. But yeah, getting into it, this second half, if I can get this to start, they're running this shallow action with, and then let me rewind a little bit. This shallow action with AJ, they clear out. They clear out the corner right here, or clear out the wing right here. Richie Saunders going to the opposite wing. So they have acres of space for AJ to drive, and then Krivas and drop. And this is where you kind of want to see AJ slow down a little bit. AJ really be able to kind of grift in the middle of the floor, but he just can't stop his momentum. And Krivas, man, it was stark. This was, I think, he didn't have a great box score game, but I think just the issues. I mean, obviously they're running so much offense through AJ, they couldn't generate quality paint. They were getting in the paint, but really not quality paint touches with Krivas protecting the rim. So here, AJ almost has a turnover. Does manage to get the assist here on the kick out, but generally speaking, not the best process. And again, the exact same shallow action, this time early offense. Last one was more out of a pistol alignment. AJ getting to his right hand over here, and somewhat similar results against Krivas and drop. Again, he's so good in a back pedal, man. It's kind of
his mobility is insane,
absurd. And AJ settles here for a pull-up jumper.
So what would you think is like an optimal process on those two possessions, right? Sometimes you'll see guys when they see a deep drop against a terrifying paint defender, they might try to draw the big back out into an isolation situation. You might see like a kick and a screen. What would have been the better sort of way to attack that particular type of defensive alignment?
So here, I don't necessarily mind the pull-up. It's tough because on the last one, he gets his shot block, and he's definitely, I think that that's where the deterrence of Krivas comes in. But it's that deceleration, that patience in the middle of the floor. And really, you have a quality shooter, and this is somewhat of like a difficult attempt or a difficult pass to throw off a live dribble. But if you're going to be a primary, you probably need to recognize that you're going to have Toby Awaka tagging the roller here, and then you have that release valve on the wing, okay? And it's, again, not to isolate this one possession, but he wasn't making that pass at all over the course of this game. And that's really, ideally, you have an ISO player like this, a guy who can just soak up so much usage. You want to see him get all the way. That was what was the most alarming with that lineup data to me, is like you need to see him getting all the way to the rim, because the benefit of having that kind of player is you can put really defensively slanted big lineups around him. Honestly, not too dissimilar from the kind of personnel Arizona has. But if AJ's not getting to the rim, he's not putting the ball on the rim and not giving the opportunity to rack up offensive rebounds, then it's a difficult proposition, man. It makes it a lot less. It makes the avenues to generating good offense, because that was my appeal with AJ. It's like, all right, limitations aside, playmaking limitations aside, defensive limitations aside, he's going to be good on offense, like pretty quickly. But if he's a little less capable getting to the rim, the entire pitch kind of falls apart.
And I think to build on what you said too, like getting to the rim isn't just for his offense. It opens up different passing angles as well, right? So if he's not able to exert that pressure, then and if he can't engage that drop defender, and if he can't reliably generate fouls there, then that pocket pass, that short roll pass isn't going to be as open. And I think that there's people in the chat saying, "Oh, why do you disrespect AJ so much?" And then another question from Trout where he's saying, "Do you think AJ is being misused this way? Like, would he yield better results under a different play style?" And I think we would both agree that this is the context that AJ wanted for himself coming into college, right?
Definitely.
Like, again, theoretically speaking, Kevin Young's offense is the best approximation for NBA level offense or NBA style offense with the spacing principles and the fact that he's playing with both Richie and Robert Wright, who are one of the better caliber off the dribble shooters, whatever it may be. Like, he's playing with two other handlers and then a bunch of play finishers. Now, on a night like this, where his shots aren't falling, it's not going to look as good. But I think this is the play style that you need him to be at to be maximized. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's kind of, again, maybe somewhat of a misalignment between the personnel BYU brought in this year and the personnel BYU brought in this year and AJ's preferred play style. They probably could have afforded to get better in the front court. I mean, Kevin Kate is an undersized 5, and the kind of complementary pieces they have around him, Richie Saunders, Rob Wright, they're not really going to bring a defensive edge. And that's where and they're not specifically, they're just not crashing the offensive glass like you'd like to see a team that has a player like AJ who's living on the interior, that's putting shots on the rim as frequently as he is. So that's kind of where things are suboptimal, I guess. But, and again, like you said, this was it. Kevin Young's offense has been touted as NBA, like very similar to an NBA offense. They're running NBA sets. And they've just, AJ, going from Yegor running the show last year, Yegor Demon, to AJ, it's noticeable how their play styles changed. I mean, they're still running a good amount of pick and roll last year. They were 73rd percentile on pick and roll frequency. This year, 92nd percentile. So that's actually up. But last year, they were first percentile in isolation frequency, barely running ISOs. This year, 70 percentile in ISO frequency. So just playing more stagnant and AJ hasn't been good about engaging the pieces he does have. You have guys like Richie Saunders and Rob Wright, and he just hasn't
call that ball stopping, because we've got a comment about that, and I think it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I hate to. I think, I don't want to say ball stopping is underrated, but I'm saying like getting shots on rims is an underrated skill, man. We so oftentimes like want to, us especially, like people that come from an analytical approach, you want to have these like really like connective players, like high IQ players, and you envision them all kind of congealing together. But oftentimes you have a bunch of guys with more generalized skill sets versus specialists even, and you end up with a kind of a toothless offense. I feel like we've seen that with the Hawks, and the two of us, with our background being Hawks fans, you see that with the Hawks in some cases where we have a bunch of kind of complementary pieces or guys that like the theory of them, the theory of these kind of two-way wings is a lot better than the actual product.
Yeah.
But yeah, so AJ, getting him involved in these more wing actions, these shallow actions, and they're running zoom a lot to get him to his right hand again. And this is where I really struggle. Like this right here, ideally, even this early in the shot clock with this much space, you got to pull that. And that's where I've maybe been the most disappointed in his 3-point rate, just stagnating almost completely over the past year. And I'm not sure if we've discussed that in depth on here, but I know I've discussed it in the past on Finn's podcast, A Double Bonus. That was really an area that I expect him, because he's an 80% career free throw shooter, obviously has like good pull-up mechanics, but then again, it maybe not. So a big reason he's able to get his shot off in the mid-range is because he has that like 2-motion release, almost like SGA. And that probably is somewhat detrimental to him being, a quick 3-point shooter, a quick a 3-point shooter that can get shots from deep off consistently and at volume from distance. But again, just not the process we want to see here. He gets downhill, and I'm going to talk about this early or later on with Braden Burries. Again, this is probably also just not the best offense. I don't want to say scheming because everyone's runs zoom now, but
Yeah.
how the spacing principles BYU had versus Arizona is kind of noticeable. Like you have AJ driving into the gap. Like Arizona's gapping hard on guys that are even guys that are shooters getting into AJ's handle because they know he's not going to make this pass. They're going to force him into an early pickup, and this is going to be a turnaround. Like that's a short mid-range jumper. Does manage to draw the foul, and I feel like AJ's almost been hamstrung by getting having a star whistle so early in his career. Yeah. Because I just don't. These are ultimately these are high variance takes, And I said that earlier with the mid range jumpers, but even living in the paint like that, you're introducing a lot of possibility for turnovers, which we want to avoid at all costs, given his play style. And again, you just may not get these. You can't bank on these calls game to game, and as the margins shrink with the caliber defenders you have, he got to the line consistently in this game, but I think some of these calls were dubious, not to say to blame it on the ref, but I don't think you can. This could have been worse for AJ.
Yeah, for sure.
And again, running zoom for this time versus Krivas and drop. And my biggest, and I'm going to mention this a lot with a lot of these dudes, it's just the pace he's playing at. He's not probing. He's not looking to really to drag Krivas out or compromise Krivas to a more extreme degree. He's really just getting downhill. He's going to get into his bag. He's going to get to his get into the midi, and the results are they were just mixed most of this game. That's a decent low pickup, but again, just kind of rushes to the rim, gets blocked by Krivas. And then this is the Burry tape. But on that last one, this is where he probably had an opportunity to snake the pick and roll here, or at least give his roller is completely. I mean, these guys are just inches away from each other. He has no room to make this pass, even if he wanted to, and then it's just the pace he's driving. Krivas is able to get good depth, like we said, incredible mobility, especially backtracking. And I feel like you're not seeing, there's no evidence that the gears are turning and he's trying to process the picture in front of him, Like Kennard Davis had hit a three earlier. He hit a three in a few clips ago that I'd shown. Obviously, Ricky Saunders here, his man's tagging the roll. Del Orso here is tagging the roll, so Saunders is going to be vacated, but AJ's not. That picture isn't getting taken in. This is very much one track mind here. He's getting the rim and not getting the rim to grift like he probably should against maybe one of the best shot blockers in the country and in this draft class. And it's just these are tough. These are bad shots. Do you remember the Owen Phillips graphic from this past year where it was
with the percentage of, or the points per possession for the offense following a possession?
Yes, right? Yeah. And then one of the worst, it was live ball turnover, and then immediately after it was block shot.
At rim blocks.
Yeah, at rim blocks. So this is tough. And again, thinking about the kind of lineup configurations that AJ would find success in, if he's probably going to have to play. It honestly has to look similar to the Rockets, for example, where you're playing somewhat slow. You want to maximize the possessions via offensive rebounds, minimizing turnovers, because I just don't think AJ is going to be a plus passer for a primary guy. And these areas you really want to see some growth. And I'm curious, man. He's played 2 top 10 2-point defenses, UConn and Arizona. UConn, he just hit it. I think it was 4 for 5 from in the mid range. So, and then now in this game, those shots don't fall, and then it's the results are paltry, So, do you want to get into the guys you had clipped up?
Yeah, I think to tie a bow on AJ, his 24 points on 40 true shot attempts, which is field goal attempts and free throw attempts, that is the worst point production of any game that I have in my database, which goes back to future NBA players back to 2003, right? So it's to dominate that much shot usage, to in some ways suppress the ball movement and the actual sort of motion of the other players and give you that sort of result, obviously isn't tenable. Now, contextually, it's one game against, again, arguably top 2 defense in the league, and they are built to sort of really maximize his flaws. And we'll have to continue to see if anyone can really perform well against Arizona. Like, I'm sure someone at some point will get a magnet ball, but like, this is, and a lot of it, this is a juggernaut. It's
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect, quite honestly, this was what I don't want to say this is what I was expecting, but more so like this is not something that caught me off guard. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
this was the
Yeah.
more likely outcome, to be honest. And I think that's a testament to Arizona's defense, but it's also speaks to just where AJ is right now as a player. And we're never going to say that's exactly who he's always going to be, but as the sample grows and it harkens back to the pre-NCAA priors, and we talk about the limitations of that archetype as a whole, this is the necessary conversation. It's not that we're hating; it's that you have all these other guys who are producing and giving you ancillary impact and are at least neutrals on the defensive end. And that's the type of stuff he's going to have to do, perform against tough competition, ramp up defensively. And Thiago just said, I think it might help his development if he isn't the number one on offense wherever he gets drafted. So he's forced to learn how to play in a smaller role. And I don't know if he has that mindset. I don't want to say he's Cam Reddish. And I also, obviously I don't know the guy, but it's like his best outcome is going to be as a primary guy. I don't think it would be like as a complimentary. And that's just more so about like the best value for that type of player and where he'll be drafted. Like, it's not like, Ace Bailey was taken fifth, right? And in a lot of ways, Utah is using him as like that garbage man. But if you think about the return on investment of taking that pick, maybe you should have considered taking someone else if you weren't going to try and, you know, he has his flaws. I don't want to draw that comparison too much. And I want to shout out. We got Warlock in the Twitter stream. We got Kenny Baby on the TikTok stream. And so we'll go ahead and we'll hop into Ament, man. So I was overly cool on Ament to start the cycle. I did not
A lot of
like,
us were for
yeah,
sure.
I did not like much about his profile. I didn't like um, the overall thought of taking a guy who, or even like taking a guy in the lottery who was this frail, who did have these physicality benchmarks, right? Like, I think I have the notes in my. Let me pull them up really quick. But like, as a prospect in pre NCAA, he was at per 40. He was at 24 points, almost 12 rebounds, 2 assists on 0.9 ATO, about 4 stocks, which is honestly really good. 1.5 stocks per foul. He was a real shooter, 83% from the line, 38% from three. Real volume on that as well. Free throw rate was decent. He wasn't getting up a ton of threes, right? But I think it was very clear when he came into the SEC, the frame wasn't going to be ready for SEC physicality. He's going to be playing in one of the more complicated offenses with Rick Barnes. But similar to AJ, that type of player, Nate Ament, could not be in a better context, right? Like, we saw what he did with Dalton Connect. We've seen what he's done with like Chaz Lanier. That type of offense is built for a guy like Nate Ament, like, a guy who has this movement shooting ability. But what I have liked, and I again, like, this is coming from someone who did not like him at all. Like, I was so cool on him. He has really ramped up on some of these physicality indicators. So like, to give you all a perspective before we look at the tape, Ament was at a 60 free throw, or sorry, he was at like a 45 free throw rate before conference play started, and then he's now at like a 75 or something like that, which is really really good. He had issues like producing on the glass as well, which at 6'10 just wasn't acceptable. He wasn't attacking decisively. He didn't look comfortable in the offense. And now we're seeing, and we'll talk about it with the tape, we're seeing him get on the glass. He's competing through physicality. He's stampeding off the catch. He's doing all these things that at 6'10 make him very, very interesting, even if he is limited as an overall offensive player, right? But like, coming into conference play, he had a 0.7 block rate at 6'10, which
Yeah,
is,
that's unacceptable.
unacceptable. I just, there's no explanation for something like that. Now in conference games, he's at a 3.4. And so like, that's what we're looking for. His free throw rate has jumped almost 20%. He's also, his shot still isn't falling, which at this point, like, unfortunately, yes, the college sample was small, and I will continue to trust the priors of the high school. I think he will be able to shoot it. It's kind of weird that like his free throws aren't better. Like, I think if he was at like 80%, I'd feel a little bit better about it. But yeah, he's getting on the offensive glass around the same rate. He's getting on the defensive glass around the same rate as well. But he always had a defensive rebounding, which is I think a good sign. But
Huge. Yeah.
yeah, let's go ahead and walk through this, man. So when I talk about like confidence or decisiveness for a prospect, I think it's always nice to see a player be featured pretty heavily in the first set, right? So, like I mentioned, Rick Barnes is a pretty complicated offense. They're going to run a ton of different like flex, rip screens, staggers, and so here Amen is that first screener. And we talked about this with Paul McNeil, right? But having a shooter who can screen is pretty important for their translation. That he's going to run off this pin down, and they're basically going to set up the first action kind of gets denied, and then they're going to flow into a weak side pick and roll. Amen's going to throw it. He's going to chase and come back to it. And again, at 6'10", it seems like he's really kind of remembered that he's 6'10". This was not something that he was doing consistently. Also against Alabama, there's clips in here. He was hunting mismatches to an extent that I hadn't seen him do as well. And he really punished LeBaron Philon over and over again. This clip was important to me because I want to point out how engaged he is. First, he stunts, right? So he stunts in a way that allows Gillespie to recover a little bit, and then also has, the ability to get back out to his man. When that shot goes up, he goes to attack the glass and high points it. He gets contact on the catch, grabs it. Now he's going to push the length of the floor. He gets Philon on him, and he immediately goes into mismatch hunting mode. It still doesn't feel like his handle is like something he trusts a ton, right? Like, I mean, even here, this is pretty ugly. He's kind of bending at the waist. Doesn't look very fluid here, but at 6'10" with his shooting priors, there's nothing Philon can do if he's going to attack him this aggressively. And I think the conjunction of the activity on the defensive end, attacking the glass, pushing and attacking the mismatch, very, very encouraging for me. And then here, I believe this comes out to be an offensive rebound from one of his bigs. Amen's going to get back over to the side of the floor, and then he's going to stampede off the catch here. And I think it's this one. Yeah. He's gonna catch it, and then he's gonna drive that closeout. So again, the respect as a shooter, he's gonna drive right past, and then the elevation. This is like, again, a big reminder, like, hey, this guy's 6'10", and I think that the concentration through the physicality, it's kind of just almost night and day. And I really wasn't expecting this from him with the competition going up, but outside of the, hey, like he needs time to get comfortable. But even here, like he's waving off the pick because he has a mismatch. And again, this isn't something that he was doing earlier in the season. He tells his big, watch out. He tells him to get out the way so he can isolate against Philon. And then he protects the dribble. He's able to get through that swipe through and generate a foul. And he's going to the free throw line where he's going to convert at a decently high rate. So, I mean, honestly, just really, really impressed. I still don't really think this is a guy that I would like to. He's still pretty high variance, but I think even like this is just different for me. Like the wherewithal and the comfortability to wave off the play, and he's going to say, "Hey, just let me post him." Like it's going to be big. And then the other thing is too, like he's had the wherewithal as well, like to run the offense out of like the pinch post. So, if we're going to criticize AJ for doing something like that, where he's not putting pressure on the rim and somewhat settling against a mismatch, I think we have to mention it for Amen as well. Mm-hmm. But I think that the sell here with Amen is not that he's going to be your primary, and the sell for Devontae is going to be your primary. I think Amen is, he's that secondary guy that runs some weak side pick and roll, somewhat Bane-esque, Chris Middleton-esque. So I think the standards are a little bit different. That's still not something that I would love to see from someone who's struggling as a shooter, but I think that his diet will just look different.
Exactly. And you mentioned it at the top where he'd high pointed that rebound and the defensive rebound and then just grab and go and push it up the floor. Like he brings the physicality applies across the board, whereas AJ feels almost like selectively physical, where on offense he's willing to engage, he'll try and draw fouls, but he's not mixing it up like this on the glass. And he's not, in reality, their usage is not vastly different. AJ's at 30, Amen, last I saw was at 26, 27, something like that. Mm-hmm. And they're both like feature pieces within their offense. Obviously, it's a lot fewer guys are at that 30 usage clip that AJ is versus 27. It's not like it bottlenecks pretty quick, but Amen consistently proven that he's able, even when his blocks were low, he was at a near a 3 steal rate. And dating back to AAU, those ancillaries, the defensive production was always there. How translatable is it going to be early on? I don't think vary because he's 6'10", 205 pounds, I think is what he measured at Tennessee's pro day. So it's going to take a little bit to really come through. But the fact that he has a 60 free throw rate, that's really what gives me pause, man. Whatever I think, because like I was with you, I wasn't very compelled by the Nate Ament sell going into the year. I just was fairly skeptical. This was a guy that was sub 40% on half court layups in AAU. You know, I just was like, hey, this could potentially be a one level scorer, or in being that size and not being able to finish at the rim is pretty debilitating. But he's improved in that sense. Tennessee is a really difficult finishing context. I mean, they prioritize offensive rebounds and they play very deliberate style. Like you said, it's like very heavily schemed. Offense. There's not a lot of freestyling, but being able to get to the 60 free throw rate, looking to hunt every single mismatch, and then obviously defending, doing what he can on that end and producing some defensive production. That's the thing. I don't really ever see AJ just slotting into an off ball, tertiary role.
That's the thing. It's like there are more avenues for someone like Ament,
and I don't want him to. Because all the issues we have with AJ, are those really going to be dramatically improved when he's playing as a third? I just don't necessarily see that. But with Ament, the possibilities there. It's going to take a while for him to physically develop into that role, but and then with Ament is maybe what I've been the most encouraged by. Playmaking is like it's starting to get better. He was sub 1 assist to turnover in AAU. I think he's at 1 right now, and I think it's 1-to-1 assist to turnover. If he's able to maintain that, this is a lot more palatable player moving forward.
Yeah, right now he's at 0.94, 45 assists, 48 turnovers. Okay. But that's improvement, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
He is still 48% on layups. And I think the mention about the type of shot quality that's generated from Tennessee, the low transition volume as well. Like he's at 18%, so that's not too bad. But I'd imagine if he's already at 40% on layups, you take out the transition, I think that's going to be a very, very concerning number. That can be a physicality thing, it could be a decision-making thing. We've got a question from Gigi Jackson. He said, how do you distinguish between prospects making accelerated development coming into conference play versus small game sample variance? And this is, I have to point to what you just said, right? Like if you're reverting back to priors, then it's more trustworthy. Like Ament had ancillary production in high school. It just wasn't immediately available. Again, probably because of the frame, the comfortability with the offense, whatever it may be. And so it's a bit more trustworthy when, hey, I've seen you do this before in a different context. Now, as this sample size grows, like, because the other thing is too, in general, like the more you need to do, partitioning college samples is not super helpful, right? But from a translatability perspective, hey, is this guy going to be able to scale up or down? I think that's where it matters. Like Colin Knippel, I pointed to that. Like in the ACC tournament, flag goes down. Khan's usage spikes. He remained just as efficient. He's still turnover reverse, and he led them to that ACC, title. That is, again, 3-game sample, but it was a different context. He performed with the same level of production and it's even scaled up. And that's when something like that is more meaningful to me. But if it's hey, this guy is shooting 55% from 3 in conference play, and all of a sudden he has like a BPM or a DRE, to cite the metric I use, of like 12, that's different, right? So you do have to distinguish between hot and cold streaks as a shooter. If it's a shooter, then you can almost always throw that in a bin, especially if there aren't priors or if it's so dramatically different. But also, guys go through slumps. If Ament started shooting 40% from 3 from now on, I wouldn't be surprised. But that's because of the priors. And that's why I wouldn't, hand wave it away as small sample.
Exactly. Which made this so impressive, like you just said, he's still sub 30% from 3 and has been in conference play. It's still, I think he tweeted.
Yeah, it went up like 8%. He's at 58% in conference play, true shooting wise. Before conference play, he was at 52. Yeah. And so that's the free throw line. It's the free throw line improvements and all those different things.
And that first chunk of the season, that's with playing, the dregs of the world, the ASUN teams, the North Floridas of the world that they were playing early on in the season. Yeah. And I mean, the fact how I distinguish the two is typically when these guys are moving on, if they're improving in areas that were, weaknesses at dramatically lower levels, like Ament shooting 40% on layups against, Adidas competition, he was probably where he may see that entire season, the 20-something games he played, he may have seen, 3-4 high major bigs, the entire time. And that honestly may be generous. Whereas now he's playing in the best conference in the country and just finding a way, that's meaningful for me. And then finding a way playing much more half-court basketball, Yeah. But and then there was another guy that I don't know if we had on the graphic, but another guy who I wanted to talk about in terms of development, Kingston Flemings, where there are certain contributing factors where it makes me think, hey, this may be real. This may be, substantial development versus small sample theater.
Yeah, no, I'll go ahead and wrap this tape up. I'll touch on Phylon too after you get through your next guy, just because I think he had a pretty rough game against Tennessee, but like Ament's awareness defensively, he can kind of space out a little bit here. So he's guarding Phylon here after the switch. So here Phylon comes across. Gillespie's going to call out the switch. Ament is now on him. And when that screen comes for Phylon to go to the corner, they don't communicate this switch well. It looks like his teammate is telling him to pick up the big, and he leaves the big wide open for a dunk. And I think, some of that is, you got to attribute that to, quite honestly, like Phylon's offensive gravity, but that's something to monitor with Ament because, while he theoretically has the size to be impactful, he's got to be able to be aware enough to do so. Like, I think sometimes, the most frustrating defensive liabilities are the guys who are big enough and have the tools to do so. So this is what I was talking about, where they're kind of trusting him as the guy operating in the pinch while they run their off-ball actions here. So he's got the ball here, free throw line extended. They're running different types of twirl actions here with Gillespie and some of their bigs. Gillespie's going to audible, and here Ament gets to attack with that weak side pick and roll, and it attacks with verticality and engages the big at the apex, like big time difference. And then here, remaining active and engaged off the offensive rebound, he ends up smoking it. You see that same kind of issue with the layups. I think this could also somewhat be attributed to the physicality, like a guy who, this is also obviously very clustered and very cramped spacing here, but guys who try to go up and around people don't always have the best layup numbers. Also, I have thoughts on Gillespie too, because I thought he was fantastic in this game. And I think he's one of my favorite older guards in this. I can't remember if is he draft eligible? Like auto?
Yeah. That's my guy. He's I mean, he'll be in this class. There was a guy I wrote about as a potential breakout going into the season, and yeah, I'm excited. I mean, he's a guy that plays both ways. I honestly think the defensive production maintaining, despite this being the highest creation offensive burden he's had in his entire career by far, and the worst offensive structure by far. It moves me a lot, man. I'm very excited to see. I think once the dust settles and all these guys, ultimately decide to go back to school, get some more NIL and development, I think Gillespie could work his way into the top 30 range, top 30.
No, I agree. I think he's absolutely second round pick caliber. Mm-hmm. And it just depends on I think the success of guys like Cam Spencer and Jamal Sheds should burgeon his case.
Exactly.
But he's someone that I definitely have in my probably honestly top 40 at this point. And I mentioned the handle because it's still not especially for a wing, a lot of wings you don't want dribbling anyways, but it could be problematic here against even the slightest of pressure. He drives into that nail defender. He also has his head down, so he can't make that corner kick, which is, not great. He gets it knocked away. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying his dribbling's it reminds me a lot of Ace Bailey last year as far as his footwork seems fairly disjointed from the actual handle. And I feel like his feet get stuck in the mud when he's trying to make these moves. And I mean, that last one where he gets ripped, you kind of see it, but again, totally different mindset when he's driving than Ace.
Yeah,
man. I mean, this is wild.
If he's stuck, and this is the other thing I think about organized offense, right? You're waiting for something to open up, right? So it's he's in the mindset of I need to be in this space while I wait for this action to unfold. But when he's allowed or able to drive, I think the simplicity of that has helped him a lot. And I think it's also, picking and choosing when to do so is going to be pretty important. Phylon really couldn't do much without double screens. I mentioned this in our chat, without 77. 77 is just when you have one screen here. Usually this would be called double drag. That's what I'll refer to it when it's in semi-transition. But in the half court, I feel like 77 is a more apt name, right? So you got these two screens. Usually you'll have one pop and one dive. When you see a 77 screen, right, especially whatever side the big is rolling on, you need to have this guy tag. and Amen's job is to force his skip pass. Now, that's generally speaking. I don't know Tennessee's scheme, but I would assume they don't want to leave the big wide open for a lob, right?
Yeah.
This isn't on Gillespie. It's on Amen, and he's glued to it. Like again, like the awareness just isn't there, and he's not paying attention. And you can see Rick Barnes here. He's gonna throw his hands up. Let's watch Rick Barnes right here. He's gonna look at his bench. Like, what are we doing, guys? Come on. Like
Yeah.
and then he's talking to his assistant coaches. So, at 6'10, there's potential for him to be a guy who makes impact plays on that end. And that's he's already making an impact on the glass. So like the fruit, it's low hanging fruit. And this is where I want to talk about the trigger man being trusted there. So like Tennessee will run these rip screens, or this is why I love rip screens, but you've got this action occupying the help, right? So you've got one player curling off this screen, and then you've got Gillespie looking like he's setting up a rip screen or looking to come off and curl it. But based on how Alabama plays the screen where they're completely occupied, now Gillespie knows he can just flash to the rim because it's wide open, and Amen is watching it and delivers that pass well timed, and also doesn't throw it directly to him or bounce or anything like that. He leads him in the air, which makes it a lot harder for the defense to get back to him. So encouraging to see that Rick Barnes trusts him as the trigger man. I think this one is also semi-transition. He's going to catch, hold, survey. He's got foul out on him, and immediately it's, hey, I can elevate over him whenever I want. And that was a big part of their game plan. It's a big reason why they were able to beat Alabama. And I don't think you get this without the sort of leap he's made as in terms of embracing physicality. We've got a question from Don the Casual. He actually isn't in the stream anymore on TikTok, but we'll recommend anyway. Like, how would you recommend someone getting into college ball? Because I actually don't enjoy college ball as a product. It's just NBA draft for me. I don't know if you feel, do you feel the same?
It's grown on me a ton. I'm probably especially amongst draft people, one of the bigger college basketball sympathizers, whatever you want to say. And I think keeping in mind now that quality wise, it's better than it's ever been. I mentioned earlier that these guys almost like I dropped the board last week. I did it was 58. And I'd imagine at least half of those guys come back to school. So you're obviously seeing, and it's noted amongst college basketball media, these teams are stronger than ever. Duke's team last year had the best net rating ever. Efficiency's gone up in college basketball each of the past 5 years as these teams get more modern. Alabama's a perfect example of that. But generally speaking, I would suggest, and how I've gotten to enjoy it more, try and find those teams or those programs, coaching staffs that typically run, fun systems. And a lot of those more often
Tennessee's
now,
one of them.
Yeah, and more often now, those entertaining systems are being married with high level players, and we're seeing because these guys are recognizing this is where I'm going to get developed. This is where I'm going to have the opportunity to play on big platforms like Tennessee and Alabama do, and that's kind of how I go about it. Like for example, today Vandy plays Kentucky. Vandy's an incredible watch. I would highly recommend that game to anyone. Honestly, I think today's college basketball slate's a good bit better than the NBA slate today. NBA is not necessarily, bringing it today. But yeah, that's kind of how I go about it.
No, I think I've definitely found myself watching more. Like if the NBA slate isn't enticing, if there's not a Hawks game on, I'm going to cut on some college tape. Kenny Baby on TikTok says he actually enjoys college ball more than the NBA. He asked, what's our range for Amen? I think for me,
that's tough.
With the way that he was talked about coming into the class, it's still absolutely possible that he goes lottery, which I think.
Oh, I think he will go
lottery. It's crazy. And he probably, honestly, he probably will go lottery. My range, though, this is a player that I would rather, it would be back half of the first round for me. But depending on, and also you've mentioned it too, we don't really know who's declaring. Like the class could and probably will thin out a lot. And I still think he would be honestly really benefited by going back to school. It's not going to happen because of where his consensus rankings are, not just coming into the season, but as a high school player. I'd say, I'd start considering him 13, maybe, probably a little bit further personally, just because there's other guys that I like with that particular wing skill set. So I think it'd be closer to the back half of the first round for me.
Yeah, and I'd agree. there. And that play you had where he missed the tag is so essential, like, because field plays both ways, you know? Like, I feel like oftentimes we just think about the playmaking on the offensive side of the ball, but I'm really going to keep it, like, stay particularly locked in on where his assists to turnover, his turnover rate generally end up this year, because he doesn't, despite being 6'10", he doesn't really have the margins to be like a below average, you know, processor of the game, man. He's 6'10", but like 200 pounds, and I think he has like a +2 wingspan or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, or +1 as recently. Yeah, he doesn't have like, he doesn't have the extreme length or strength to compensate for, you know, any sort of lapses defensively. So I agree. I think he'd be like incredibly well served going back to school, but that's just not going to happen.
Yeah. You want to get into
yeah. Oh, so I had Burries. I actually didn't have any Koa stuff.
Okay, yeah, you can go Burries.
Yeah. So let me get this up. And
Kenny Baby says, do you think his game is better suited for the NBA, especially if the shooting gets better? I'm not really sure that's a thing in terms of like a guy being better suited. I'd say if his NBA role is dramatically different, then it would be better. And for someone like Ament, who would be like a Cedric Coward, Jalen Wells type of guy, then I think he would be better in that role, if that makes sense. But I don't think it's about the NBA. I think it's about the role.
Yeah, I'd agree on that. So, yeah, I just had a quick thing about Braden Burries, and then we can go back to you, or I could do I had another like kind of quick cut up on Pat Ngongba. But yeah, with Burries, what I was really keeping an eye on, if you don't mind giving me a moment, I'm going to get some of these numbers up.
You're good.
Where did I?
Yeah, okay. Burries is on a bit of a run right now. I don't know.
Yeah, man.
Like
bit of
it's
run.
Getting to the point where I think I had him 15th, I think pre-NCAA, but he has put together a ton of great games, and he will probably play. I think particularly because Arizona is going to be so good, and they're going to make a deep tournament run. He's going to have recency bias on the side, and
RCI
as well. So I think he has a pretty good case to go in the top 20. I think with the way his season has played out.
Yeah, and honestly, my Burries section, very quick, just something I'd been tracking, because he had, and this is just a comparison. This is actually, I'm going to run back that AJ clip to kind of show what I meant when I was talking about the spacing concepts, spacing principles that BYU uses versus Arizona. You see AJ here running that zoom action. They're not clearing out the right side of the floor really at all. And it's going to leave Burries here totally available to dig into AJ's, you know, pretty high handle. Like I said that earlier, AJ has they've built a wall inside the arc that AJ just doesn't have the handle or burst. Really, I feel like that's something I'm always kind of surprised by. AJ relies on stride length a ton. He relies on like being just an incredibly like pliable athlete more than necessarily. He's not. I'm trying to think of an example. Like Kingston Fleming, someone's I'll go over later on, or previous wing creators or wing sized creators like Zion, for example. You think of just the quick twitch, right. Of the burst. AJ doesn't necessarily have that, but yeah, you see here the zoom action. He gets his handle dug into, kind of disrupts the drive. Whereas they run a variation of zoom here for Burries. It's Miami, where the handoff, Toby Awaka, is going to precede the ball screen. Mm-hmm. And what I've liked so much about Burries is his process. He doesn't have a great free throw rate this year. It's in the 30s, but he's always 3-point hunting. So going back to AAU, 60% of his dribble jumpers. So you take pull-up twos, pull-up threes, combine them, 60% of those are threes. Like when he's running ball screens, and this year in pick and roll, he has a 37% three-point rate in pick and rolls, up from 21% in AAU. So he had, and roughly the same number of possessions, 93 pick and roll reps so far this year, 84 in his last AAU season. So again, running ball screen actions, he's trying to make people pay from going under, because despite having a lower free throw rate, and I think that's a lot of system. I think it's, how much like few spacers they have on the floor. Arizona's near bottom of the country in 3-point attempt rate. How I think that kind of limits Burry's downhill efficacy, but he's trying to really we talk about process, and his process is just getting sharpened as time's going. I mean, the fact that he's looking to really make guys pay in these ball screens and be just the perfect Morey ball perimeter player, that means a lot to me, man. That is big. And again, another major development for Burries. He was a big reason I was out on him coming into the season. He was a 6'4" guy that was under 1 assist to turnover and was a full year older than his class. Like, Braden Burries is going to be 21 when the next NBA season starts. So that was all that combined made me like pretty lukewarm on him. But Burries is over 2 assists to turnover now. Huge development, man. You need to be a plus passer nowadays in the league at 6'4". So yeah, they run this Miami action, clear out the entire right wing. Again, common theme. This has been maybe like one of the more in vogue actions in basketball period. I feel like I've seen college and NBA. Yeah. And then Burries gets downhill, doesn't get all the way downhill, but does draw a foul on a dig attempt. And this is what I'm talking about as far as 3 hunting. Burries here in transition, immediately finds a pocket, gets his 3 up. Now, doesn't hit the shot, but again, process over results. Yep. He's not, you see in the last clip, he's not he doesn't get a ton of elevation on his jumper, and that's probably the limiting factor right now. Like, mostly in his upper body, and he has really good mechanics. And he's been on a tear from the free throw line, man. He's over 90% from the line in conference play so far. But I think that like slower, more, I don't want to say labored, but more ground bound release is where you'll see him turn down something. Not here. Here Ricky Saunders goes under. They kind of miscommunicate the switch. But yeah, they Kobe initiating. They're late on the switch there, AJ and Richie Saunders, and he hits it. But again, they run this Miami action, but then you see Burries. The BYU defender goes under. He's given a good amount of space. Still just swings the ball, though. Aristote has a turnover. But you see, even then, he's relocating on Aristote's drives. Like, he's trying to find pockets. And yeah, that's really what it comes down to for Burries, man. If the free throw rate's not going to be there this season, and although he had a good number of free throw attempts last night, just getting downhill in transition, but that 3-point development and him being like a bona fide shooter, that's going to go a long way. Because he's been good defensively this year. I don't know how much I'd really expect from, he's a guard. I mean, he's 6'4" without exemplary length. So I think he could be neutral as a guard defender, but just it's much more important to me. It's prioritizing that kind of offensive development and seeing the direction he goes. And ideally, he's able to play lead guard at some point,
I think the transition stuff is really interesting to me because I think he has now I haven't looked at the on-off, but I probably should. But watching them, the pace seems up when he has the floor. He's very prone to pushing off of getting rebounds. He's at a 30 transition frequency right now. He's taken about 30% of his shots from threes in transition as well. And so when I think about it, someone in the G.G. Jackson said, what's Barry's comp? Is it Bane? Is it Brunson? I don't really think either of those guys. I think he's more so like Quentin Grimes if he played faster and with
he's a much better driver, yeah.
Yeah, because I think, what are his drives at? Burries is at like a 1.13 drive points per possession. It's not a ton of volume. Again, Arizona's crushing teams, so a lot of it is going to be in transition. But I think he's unique in a way that it's like he's a pretty good transition guy that isn't always super disruptive, but he just has a good feel for when to push. He has a quick trigger from 3. And so that's where my mind goes to a Grimes type of guy, but he's also not a specialist like a Gary Trent as well. I think he'll have the ability to sort of toggle on and off ball a little bit. But to your point too, the assisted turnover development is very, very, very important because he didn't really have a case. A lot of what I was going off of was his AAU rim finishing numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And so you cleared up why they were actually so good.
But it's maintained. That's the thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so now that we see those priors, which were a little bit shaky, now that they're stabilizing and they're persisting, and it's not, yes, the free throw rate the free throw rate's one thing. Like I think it may be a inverse case of AJ, where like AJ's used to getting those fouls, right? And Burries is just like, I'm just gonna try to make the shot. And I do think grifting is a teachable thing, but I also think, you know, he'll be who he is. But he's at 67% on layups, which is 70% overall at the rim.
Huge.
And you can't really ask much better from a guard. I don't know what his assist rate is off.
It's pretty high. It's in the, I think it's 39% assisted, which is fairly high for a guard. But I don't want to split hairs too much because again, in AAU he had a 60 free throw rate. You know, so he was living in the paint. He's a real physical driver, physical player generally, which is something I really like to see. And you were having, I don't want to say difficulties, but the comps are tough to nail because he's really just rounded. Like he's a well-rounded player, which I typically generalists are a little scary for me. I feel like when we have the master of none types in the league, a lot of those times, I mean, we kind of saw it play out with the Hawks #1 pick a few years ago.
What about like Christian Braun kind of?
Yeah, I don't think that's at least. Yeah, because he'll kill in transition. He's not necessarily, he's obviously smaller and not necessarily the like crazy vertical athlete, but not the idea of it as far as being like a very portable offensive player and being able to defend. Yeah, I don't mind that really at all. Yeah. Or another former Nugget, maybe someone like Gary Harris is someone he.
Gary Harris was coming to mind, but I couldn't remember what he looked like before he like had all those injuries.
Yeah,
but I think that's a good shout. I want to talk a little bit Gillespie real quick before I just have a couple clips for him. He's a guy that, you know, I'll talk a little bit with Amen. I think that he's someone that I'm very intrigued with in a lot of different ways. A lot of college, you know, announcers are very enamored with like these floor generals, and I think that Gillespie's maybe one of the better sort of archetypes here because of the defensive stuff, the off-ball stuff here. That it's an immediate sort of, again, like even before knowing that the big is going to be sagged off on this, right? We see like this happen all the time in the NBA with guys like Draymond, guys who are, you know, be treated as non-shooters. The know-how to immediately get his feet ready and shoot that three. Footwork's impeccable. He knocks it down. I love seeing stuff like that. He's, again, because he's playing in Rick Barnes' offense, he's very comfortable playing off the ball as well. What is this play? Oh, that was just wrong. But here again, he's going to run off this kind of like a horns out type of thing. He's going to get the ball. Rick Barnes is going to set up their organized offense. He's going to reject the action. Then here he comes to set that rip screen for the big, and it's an immediate sort of big to big lob created, you know, from the movement of Gillespie, but also the ability to screen. And he has the frame of like a guy like a Fred VanVleet or even like a.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, like that helps so much.
And that's big because he, again, we talked a little bit about the physicality, but he made it very tough on Phylon. I think more of the struggles for Phylon, where I can talk about Gillespie's defense, are more so in the video I have for Phylon. But again, here, like the dig, perfectly timed hands. I mean, this is a bad drive from the Alabama's player, but like this is, you know, as much ball as you can get there, and strips it cleanly. They're going the other way, and eyes up immediately. And I think they ended up getting a foul out of that. Mm-hmm. He's going to get back tapped on the offensive rebound, and again, pump fake. He's going to get back off the ball. And they're going to get into another action. He's going to call a big up. He's going to, here again, like the footwork to the threat of taking that pull-up three is going to get the big. Oh, shit, I messed up. Right, but here, that pump fake, that slight hesitation, the way his feet are, this is a move that I try to perfect a lot when I was hooping, where it's like you bring the ball up in your offhand and then you switch your shooting, you bring your shooting hand like you're about to palm it, and then you switch it back over. Mm-hmm. It's nasty. He gets Alabama's big all the way in the air, and then it's.
I'm trying to think of who used to do that, because I remember that was one I practiced in my driveway all the time growing up.
And then this finish too, man. Like he's gathering with his right, which makes the big think he's got to contest that way, and then he's going to switch to the left hand, finish with the contact around him. I mean, standout game for him. Love what I saw, and he's, again, to our point, we said it a little bit earlier, I think he's going to be a candidate for that late first, early second round guy, and he's going to be an impact guy for an NBA team. I feel pretty confident about that.
Yeah.
But Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say something I can't emphasize enough with Gillespie. Obviously, like the shooting gravity, the improved playmaking, all huge for him. Man, he has a 1, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for his size, for a 6'1" guy, he has a 1% block rate for his career, which is crazy. I really think the defense is going to translate more than people. Like he's at like 4% stock for his career. Like has always racked up steals. And last year at Maryland, where he's more of like a he's playing off guys like Derek Queen and who was it, Rodney Rice. You kind of saw he had stretches, man, where he took over at the point of attack, which again, people's mileage varies on the value of, you know, man defense and playing specific roles defense. But man, he had like truly was like a game changer for that Maryland team. Help insulate their, because that front court was not that big and not the best rim protectors between, you know, Juju Reese and Derek Queen.
Yeah, and for stretches he made them viable, which is unbelievable for a guard of his size. I want to talk through Phylon. So you're going to talk about a guy who destroyed a hedge pick and roll defense, right? Which Texas Tech threw at Kingston Flemings over and over again. Phylon could not do the same thing against Tennessee, and he's getting harassed by Boswell here. Here comes that hedge. This is the first look of the game, right? Like it's the first time he's seeing the hedge. When you see a hedge, right, ideally you want to either draw the big out as much as possible, right? So you want to draw this big this way. This is also where the defense wants to send you, but if you're a talented enough passer, you can skip it over the top or you can reverse pivot. Phylon wasn't really able to do much of that. Here comes that hedge again. He's not ready to make that bounce pass. This is something I saw over and over again, especially if their feet aren't connected, there is a window here. It's tiny, yes, but these are the types of things you got to be able to make, like, especially when that hedge comes out this early and he's able to make that contact and he slips out. You've got to be able to make this lead bounce, right? You've got to lead your big, and then he can try to attack that low man. And so many times Tennessee was just able to dead the possession with that hedge over and over again. And it kind of all goes back to like the struggles with physicality. So here he's going to bring the ball up after the miss. Immediately physicality, he gets walled off. And again, he's not as ready to shoot that pull-up three. Here he's against drop coverage. Boswell sitting on his hip, and he's not able to generate that advantage because he can't muscle him off of his hip.
Yeah.
It's something that I'm trying to keep cognizant because I am a fan of Phylon. I've advocated for him on this platform and other places as well. But I think in this particular game as well, he's playing Tennessee without Amari Allen, without Aiden Holloway. He played 38 minutes. But this was happening in the beginning of the game, right? Like, you know, I can give him grace, of course, for the offensive load over the course of the game. But when you're struggling initially to break these advantages, here comes Horns out. They're going to set that angle pick and roll. Tennessee's in drop. They're going to set an away screen. Shoot. 1 second.
Dude, while you're getting back to that, man, Bishop Boswell I'm excited to see what that dude looks on the ball because the playmaking pre-NCAA was pretty solid. And defensively, he's been one of the 4 or 5 most disruptive perimeter defenders I watched this season, man. He's ridiculous.
Like a Boswell Gillespie backcourt is not like we talked about Arizona and what that meant for AJ. This is probably like the nightmare scenario for someone like Phylon, especially without any sort of secondary help. But even when he was chasing, when he was going to go, this is get action. You're going to throw it to a big and then come get the handoff. There's no advantage here. Boswell he's mirroring every step. Yeah. Every step. Here comes the hedge. Again, he's not ready. And because Tennessee was smart, they would throw a drop, then they throw a hedge. He wasn't ready to beat it. You have to outthink the hedge. It's very hard to out dribble it. And they bottle him up, super active. They wall off that immediate pass. And again, the ball gets reset. I have clips on clips of this, man. Like, and the thing is, like, when the guy gets this frustrated and it's this tough for them offensively, I think sometimes you get to be there. There are moments where it's like, okay, I just got to get a shot up. And this one, again, he's going to get blanketed. The hedge, very aggressive. Tennessee's big is leaping out. He's not able to hit his big. He gets walled off, completely blanketed. Boswell's playing great defense. And then it ends up being tipped in. But I want to talk about this particular play. This one right here, right? You know, when you can't get the easy stuff, sometimes you're just like, I just got to get a shot up. And this was one of those for sure. And I don't love seeing this. I just think he felt like he wasn't able to generate separation. So I'm just going to get one up. And, you know, it's a bad look, But I think the other thing is too, like we talked about the nail defender being vacated for someone like AJ Devonta. Here it's going to be a more organized look for Phylon. So when he comes off the screen, there's no one here. There's no one here, right? You got number 7 sitting in the corner, but there's no nail defender. So when he's able to confidently attack that outside of the hedge, knowing that there's no help there. And then now he's able to throw the lob. And I think this one gets he comes back down with it. But I think that was interesting too. Like at least that one was more so like, hey, I know I'm coming out of sideline out of bounds scenario. I know what the first read is. I can attack confidently, but you have to somewhere, you got to be able to get that organically as well. It can't just be the coaches drawing it up. And I think the thing is too, there are moments where like here he's gonna guard, and he's gonna get up in this chest. He's gonna the next clip. This one it was not enough, but it's like as he got progressively more frustrated, he had moments where he was better on defense, but like here he's not gonna really compete here when this handoff. He's not gonna be able to get through this screen, and then he's jumping and hopping around as opposed to making that contact and getting through that screen.
Yeah.
And then here though, like, I know it's in there. Like I know that ability to play defense is there because we saw it as a sophomore. Here he's gonna, pick up semi at half court. He's got his shorts up. He's sitting, poking at the ball, poke at the ball again. Now you can only do that so many times before they call a foul, but I just like seeing the ramped up aggression. And I think he also may have that same thing with Berries, where like the release point is going to suppress the pull-up 3-point volume, which is problematic, right? Like he's going to come off here, and you see how low his release is, which makes this contest a lot more impactful. So, wait, is this on? Sorry, I think I mixed up the clips, but like,
no, you're good.
He's bumped off of the driving line here, and then. This was one of 3 instances where he missed a layup and then Tennessee immediately scored. We talked about like what it looks like when you get blocked at the rim or missing rim shots. Like when you miss, especially a makeable layup like this, like your teammates are going to try kind of assume like it's going in, and then now it's a transition opportunity. You see how quickly Tennessee gets out and running, and here's Phylon, right? And now you've got an easy transition opportunity, and you've got Tennessee's guard with the ball. So I think I want to give him grace for not having his other handlers, but again, in this particular class, the bar is just higher, and he's not meeting that bar. Very tough defense to see against, but like, he was able to mix anyone who wasn't, Jacoby or Boswell, right? Like, and I think that's part of it where it's like here he's going to attack immediately against 77, and he's going to play with him on the hedge, snatch back,
saw this one, man.
And the step back 3, and it's okay. Well, he's looking a little bit better against guys like that. I think I do want to show the clip with the load up. I think it was here. This one right here. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and LeBaron's a guy that really needs that shot in his arsenal.
Yeah,
like I think for a guy that doesn't have the most incredible burst, he's really gonna need something to kind of play off of the downhill attacks.
Here they're gonna be setting up zoom action. We've talked about this. This is off a pin down. He's gonna come get this handoff.
It's like flex in the zoom. That's interesting.
Yeah. And then he's going to come back for the handoff after he comes. And then you see the physicality bothering him. They're pushing him further up the floor. Even if you talk about that initial flex sort of screen, right? Look at how he sets this as opposed to someone like Gillespie. He's not fully set. He's extending his body out. He's making half the contact. So again, Gillespie is completely out muscling him, out physicaling him. He's pushing this point further up the floor. And then the release point, again, on that snatch back, very nice move, but look at how low the ball is, right? And so Gillespie is easily able to disrupt that shot. And he still makes it because Phylon does have some pretty nice shooting priors, and he's had a pretty nice shooting season. But the ability to get to those windows, the ability to compete against physicality will be something that we'll have to continue to be matched up without continue to watch for, because, I mean, here he's going to attack a mismatch out of gut DHO, which is basically a DHO. It starts with him in the paint. So they're going to start him off ball. He's going to come up and set, or he's going to come off that sort of that screen. He's going to come get the DHO. Now they're going to rescreen it. Now Tennessee is going to opt to switch, and then now he can attack that mismatch. But he gets the foul there. But again, you probably want to see a little bit more pace here, similar to AJ, where he just kind of attacks the rim. He's not trying to bait him into a foul. Gets bailed out a little bit. But yeah, and then we got a question. Kenny Baby says, what's Phylon's range for you? Man, yeah, that's a good response. Yeah, it could be anywhere, man. Like it really could. Like I wouldn't be shocked if a team took him lottery. I wouldn't be
Hmm.
shocked if a team took him top 10. But I also wouldn't be shocked if a team took him, 25th. So I don't know.
Yeah, and candidly, I had him pretty low. I had him in the second round on the board. I dropped last
Mm,
week, and it was more so because of like what you mentioned with the lack of physicality on the other end. A lot of what the appeal, like the Andrew Nemhard comps, who or at least I made, and I think some other people have at
for
different
sure.
points, but the utility of being an off ball guy, he was 177 pounds at the combine last year, tested terribly. And that's testing may not be the end all be all for a lot of these guys,
Yeah.
especially a 19-year-old, but it's seeing the defensive production. He's a guy who needed to maintain that defensive production, even with the usage elite. Like I needed to see him still have that motor, still be able to contribute on both ends, because ultimately there's no universe where he's a 30 usage guy in the NBA, and
No.
to be that like kind of Swiss Army knife guard that off ball, the guy who can slide on and off ball, he's really got to. I mean, Andrew Nemhard so far, like what he's been kind of known for is being that extending ball pressure, taking a lot of defensive pressure burden off of Tyrese Halliburton. I'm not sure if LeBaron's ready to do that just yet. Another guy, no chance he doesn't go out this year with how the season's gone so far. I'd love to see him in college for another year and just like improve physically. I mean, he already has made strides. His free throw
Yeah.
rate, it's like 50 in conference play, and it's slowly creeping up. So I think maybe another year he'd be really well served by. But again, just doesn't seem to necessarily be in the cards right now.
Yeah. Shout out to we got Blank in the Twitter chat. He says Fallon's a fade, bro. It's over. If it continues this way, I'm gonna have to agree with you. But maybe this is Cooper delusion. But I do think I remain enamored with what he could be in a scaled down role because we've seen it a little bit. But I think as the sample size grows in this higher usage role and we see the limitations of him on the ball, that isn't, again, to AJ's point, it isn't going to minimize by him being off the ball. It's a little bit better if if he has the 3-point volume or, he's super dynamic off the catch. But Phylon's best, well, the ideal Phylon case is that he's not your primary handler, but he's a secondary guy, to your point, like Nemhard, who isn't as destructive as offense because he can alleviate all this pressure. We've got Joe Hilbert in the chat. He says, "How's things going, man? I think I'm doing good, man. Ahmed, how you doing?"
I'm chilling, bro. This is exciting stuff.
And then we've got a comment about Aiden Holiday. Is he a real NBA guy? Man, that's tough too.
I know our guy.
I go back and forth.
Yeah, our mutual friend Non Hoops is a fan, and he mentioned on their pod the double bonus. Holloway, nuclear shooter, legit could be one of the best shooters in the world at his peak, one of the 5-10 best shooters in the world at his peak, but functionally is 5'8". Doesn't stock, doesn't rebound, I don't think zero dunks. This person says zero dunks and no blocks. It's tough, man, to be a guy that profiles as the potentially the worst defender in the NBA. So
yeah,
I would say no for the time being.
Yeah. So would you need to see the? It's not like the athleticism is going to be.
I'd have to see him be play point guard, honestly. And he did in high school. He was capable, more than capable. He was very good at it in high school. But yeah, I'm gonna have to see what the league guard looks like for Aiden Holloway.
For sure. You want to hop into Pat now?
My guy, man.
Pat is man. What a watch, man. Like it's like the minutes without Boozer, where because the Duke will go through these stretches where it's like they don't know what to do when they should just give it to Pat every time. And I think
they're starting to more.
And they're starting to do it. And it's been great to watch.
Yeah. And I want to start this off again. We're going to go. Yeah. So yesterday, the Louisville game, again, laid the beat down. Duke did on Louisville, a top 20 team. But it was the most post-up reps Pat's had in his career so far in a game. I think he had 5 post-ups in the Louisville game. And this and I raised this point, and all of these are going to be virtually all these clips are going to be Pat post-ups, because Pat now he has about a 3-year sample, and it's small, and that's kind of where things get a little tenuous with Pat, but he has a 3-year sample basically profiling as a guy who could be the best post scorer in the world at his peak. And so starting with it in EYBL, in the entirety of Synergy's EYBL database, of players that have had in 70 or more post-ups in an EYBL season. So give or take 3.5 post-ups a game. Pat is the second most efficient in the EYBL database. He was 1.12 points per possession. Number one, the god Kenny Lofton. And number three was, hey, for all his faults, man, Kenny Lofton never had trouble scoring. And number three was Paolo Banchero. So Pat, obviously an incredible company. Last season, and only 16 possessions because he was injured so often, but 16 post-up possessions last year, 1.44 points per possession. It was the 99th percentile. And then right now he's at 1.27 points per possession, which is the 95th percentile. And he's already doubled the number of possessions he had all of last year. He's at 33 post-ups so far. And maybe the most important with the baked into that points per possession, he has a 100% free throw rate in the post. Man, he's unguardable, dude. And in the college level, at least, and you saw it I think I mentioned when we discussed the SMU game, you saw it in stretches for the Louisville game. In single coverage, man, you just really can't do much with Pat in the post. I mean, the physicality, and we'll run through these clips right now, but you see the physicality of Ali Khalifa here, who's about a 280-pound big, a little short of 7 foot. And then Pat, he has a high center of gravity, man, but he's herky-jerky, he's physical, and he has incredible touch. And didn't miss a free throw last night. He went 5 for 5. Looks like he's finally getting a little. And then here, anytime, and this is Samet Ikitoglu and SMU, again, kind of similar deal, man. They isolate Pat on the left block, and he just gets to work, help pull away in this game. And he fades a little bit, but his touch, I think, and they're leading into it more because I think Duke and Shire, they're starting to recognize that they're it's not what John Shire probably wants to see. They run more Princeton sets, but the reality is their two best players are I don't want to. I know some people may get upset hearing this, but their two best players are bigs. And Cam Boozer, I'm confident he'll wingify fairly quickly, but their two best players are back to the basket type players, and they've been running this kind of triangle series, this inverted triangle series. It's like a screener type action to get Cam open. It's like a cross screen, and then Pat sets a down screen so they can create a wide open. Like a wide open entry angle, and it's been money so far this season. They've really killed Wake Forest with it a couple days ago. But yeah, continuing this, and then Pat, anytime they get a cross match, you see here they run these double staggers. Hold up, make sure I'm in here. And they run these double staggers for Isaiah Evans. Don't really get much out of it, and then again clearing out the right side of the floor, you see Pat sets a down screen, this down punch. He has Javon Hadley in the post guarding him, who is not a small guy. He's 6'7", listed 210 right here. But Pat's listed 250 pounds. He's going to put on weight as he grows. He is yet to turn 20. He's a very young sophomore. He'll turn 20 in April. But anytime he's matched up with this bodes really well, I think, for the league. I know people hear post scoring, man. They don't get excited. D-League. They don't love the bigs anymore, man. They don't love seeing people get to it on the block.
We're losing recipes, man.
We're losing them quick. But anyway, Pat virtually like an NBA, Javon Hadley, not an NBA player, but in the range of an NBA size wing, And then you see what Pat does to him on this possession, man. They don't have the initial angle. For the post entry, you see Isaac McNeely kind of cheating over, and then hold on, let me go back a little bit. But then you see Pat just move Hadley to create the angle over the top for Cam Boozer, reels it in. His hands are incredible and just gets the finish.
Yeah,
man. And then again, just more cross matches. It's a cross screen here. He's on Jamari McDowell, very small guard, and this is what they say, a barbecue chicken, man, just right over the top. And again, other guy, Lawan Watts, who is big, who is a 6'7", 230-pound jumbo wing. Pat really doesn't have many issues carving out space on the block, and it's just his patience, the footwork. I really think he has – I mentioned this in our group chat. I think he has the third highest offensive ceiling in this class. I think you have DP, you have Boozer, and then what Pat can do offensively, the touch. very confident he's going to shoot threes. Funny enough, his 3-point rate is basically the same as AJ DePonce's. And outside of, he's coming off probably the worst stretch of free throw shooting in his career because it's something going on with his ring finger. But like I said last night, perfect from the line and could trend upwards, be around somewhere in the mid 70s for his career once he finishes, if he kind of corrects course over the back half of the season. And then here you see, and this is why I raise the point as far as Pat having a lot more potential as a post-up player, because it's not as conditional as it may seem initially. All the previous plays I ran through, he's almost the exact same spot. He's on the left block. He gets to get to his right hand, and he's isolated. It's like the reason Duke has such a crazy high turnover rate this year is because the guard play has been hit or miss, man, and they struggle with these post entries. And generally speaking, it's an issue a lot of these guys, these bigs, run into. It's, if you're not able, that's what separates, a Nikola Jokic from other post scorers in the past. Is like Jokic has a handle, man. He can create his own shots in the half court. And Pat hasn't gotten to show that as much, but I'm telling y'all, there are glimpses. Again, Jackson Kohler here, big player, one of the best rebounders in the country, just incredible positional strength. And Pat isn't able, he gets walled off. He's not able to create a driving lane, but you get to see kind of the offensive depth, man. Is that an optimal shot? No, but again, he's 6'10", 7'4" wingspan, 6'10", 6'11", 7'4" wingspan, and there are counters there. And then this next play against Florida, maybe my favorite. Again, Duke running 5 out. They have Malik Brown playing as the DHO hub as like a delay center, which is just, we see it in the NBA all the time now. I'm actually not the biggest fan of it, generally speaking, man. I think we've gone a little too far with these Princeton principles. But yeah, Malik Brown out here, top of the key, initiating. They're trying to create zoom action for Isaiah Evans, looking for him to get this handoff. He's kind of bodied. Oh, goodness. Sorry about that. He gets kind of bodied by Klavsar, and they have to toggle. And then Pat here, this is Micah Handlockton, really underrated center in my opinion. He's one of the best offensive rebounders in the country. Pat, face-up game, and this is something I think it very well might not be. I think more or less he's projected outside of the lottery in any major outlet. I don't know if he's going to be given that kind of leeway as the 20th overall pick, let's say. But I think you see him face up here. He's isolated. He gets walled off, but then finds a cutting Brown, man. His feel is what separates it. You just don't find guys with the intersection at, like, again, legit center size with these 1.4 assists to turnover right now that can pass, potentially shoot, and just has one. You just really need, if you have one tool, that's just going to be difficult for virtually anyone to stop. I think I don't see this changing much for Pat at the next level. He's sitting at a 70 free throw rate right now. It's been, and as his offense has ticked up, I mentioned this with Darren Peterson on the last stream we did, the more usage Pat's seen, the better Duke's offense has been. They were ranked 20th about 2 weeks ago per Bart Torvik. Now they're a top 10 offense. He's going to finish 10 BPM for his career. We've mentioned that as being kind of like a watermark for elite prospects, or at least bankably good prospects. And he's one of the younger players in the class. So I think I'm very intrigued to watch Pat develop over the course of the season and get to see more of these glimpses, man, and get to see, the full extent of what he can do. And then this was some Caleb Wilson stuff. But yeah, where are you at with Pat? I had him fourth on my board, so especially high. I got some slander for that, man. People were not happy with it. People were not a fan of seeing Pat that high. But as I try and pull this thing back up,
I had him top 15, closer to the end of 15 at the beginning of the season. I think what's and this is somewhat going along with the question that we have in the chat, right? Like, are you sure it's not a case of like an elite mismatching scheme? I do want to say two things. Miles Turner has actually always been a good post-up player, at least since 2022. Like, he's been top 20 in points over expectation. He also is not, well, at least from that point. But Miles Turner has his own problems because he was just super inefficient in the short mid range, and his touch as a stretch big actually isn't as good as you expect in that particular area. I think that to Ahmed's credit, he pulled up, he showed clips of Pat moving centers, right? Like, and also it may be a mismatch, but it's still a bigger guy who's going to put a lot of weight and physicality against him. And I think that the thing about Pat, and I see GG, he's elaborating on this point. He doesn't think that Pat can get to Jokic. Or
That's fair.
Jokic.
That's a valid point.
Yeah, and that's definitely valid. And I think we have a question or a comment from TikTok where he's saying, I still don't see how he can be a lottery pick due to his lack of creation individually. And I think that
I strongly disagree with.
Yeah, the ecosystem impact from Ngongba and what we've seen from as a post up, I think that he has that case. Just off the strength of that. Like, now whether a team will allow him to do so is a whole different question. To your point, like where he's being viewed at from consensus. But if a team can recognize the value that he has as a post up, delay hub, mismatch punisher, and then overall like just offensive booster, then I think you could definitely see that sort of impact from him.
Yeah, as far as the playmaking, I mean, this has been maybe the best playmaking big in at least the Bart Torvik era. I can't really think of many others that at least have that kind of turnover avoidance. And then you really just need like the dynamic between scoring and playmaking. I think you really just need kind of one fastball to open up so many like playmaking windows. You think about someone, Joel Embiid isn't an all-time passer by any means, but became a capable passer because of how unstoppable an offensive force he is. And not saying Pat is that level of an offensive force, but man, he's not totally out of the like realm of as far as like dominant offensive centers, and then it's just so far and ahead of the rest of these guys as a playmaker, man. I just think the interplay between those two skill sets is just going to be really deadly. It's going to be really viable at the next level. Boom, and the lower body strength. That's again another valid point. A lot of the time you saw on a couple of those hooks, he's kind of almost fading because he wasn't able to kind of generate that last little or that like forward momentum on his like final pivots before putting the shots up. But I think that's something I'm going to trust with age. And I honestly think the lower body stuff, or like the kind of weaker trunk he has, it's more prevalent on the defensive end. That's where you see him kind of get pushed off his spot on the glass. And that's kind of where, and honestly, in the post, he struggles a little bit guarding the SMU big Igutoglu in that matchup. There were a few times Pat got kind of put under the basket guarding him on the block. So those are things I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I think that's good points from everyone all around. I think that as the season has gone on, I've gotten hired, but also like someone like a Damar who I have as like center one. I've sort of had to reevaluate like the how much I can stomach like turnovers from a big, and I'm still very, very intrigued by him, and he's still someone that I think will warrant a look in the lottery. I still feel strongly about that.
Yeah, man, our guys Niall and Finn were slandering, dude. I didn't care. But whenever we have him on, that's one we got to talk about for sure.
Yeah, I think he's better than that for sure. Let me see. I've got.
Yeah, we're running long. I don't have to do all these guys.
No, I do want to touch on just some couple other guys real quick, and then we can finish up with Flemings.
Yeah,
if that's cool with y'all.
For sure.
But let's see. I want to talk about JT Toppin.
Okay.
He's a guy that like I think it's getting is as productive as he is. It's getting bleak a little bit, which is
okay. I'm glad we were on the same page with this one. Yeah, man, it's getting scary.
Yeah, it's getting scary, and I don't know where you thought I was gonna go with that.
I thought you might be. I mean, he's so productive. I couldn't have like totally hated on you if you were like, man.
I mean, the production is there, but I just think the way it's happening is, I don't because let me just get to the film before I talk about everything. But like, The thing about Toppin is, he's just such a monster on the glass.
Yeah.
I mean,
That Houston game was crazy.
Yeah, what he did against Houston, the whole especially because Christian Anderson was a complete dud. He didn't give them anything, right? Toppin was insane. And we talk about the hedges, right? And of course Houston is a more aggressive, more competent defense than Texas Tech, but Christian Anderson continually gave JT Toppin the ball on these particular types of looks, right? So most frequently you'd see Houston throw two at the ball against Christian Anderson. They didn't want him to beat them, which he didn't, right? But what he would do is continue to give the ball to JT Toppin here. And I want to say he went 0 for 4, 0 for 5 from 3. And the other thing is he wasn't driving those as well. He would just take those spot up threes, and that's not his strength. I think when he did put the ball on the floor, you got a little bit better, but it's still ugly. Also, he fouls on a Tugler post up here, which is just unforgivable. I can't because as much as I love Tugler on defense, this is
man. It is one of the worst.
Yeah.
This is some of the worst you'll see.
I think I wrote in my notes, I was fouling on a Tugler post up should get you drawn and quartered because you have to KYP, right? This is a dead possession. It's 9 seconds on the shot clock. What are we doing? And I think again, it's he is a forward. All the positional concerns that people have about someone like Cam Boozer should be applied to someone like JT Toppin. He is position locked as a 4. The offensive rebound and the rebounding in general would be fine as a 5, but even his frame is not conducive to anchoring a defense. No. Now, I do have to say, generally speaking, Texas Tech has been a lot better defensively. He's been a big part of that. And he just constantly out leverages guys on the glass. He has a whole arm pinned there. He gets to the free throw line. In a lot of ways, Toppin just creates mismatches. So Texas Tech just had to get shots on the glass. It didn't really matter what offense they were running. Just get a shot on the glass, and JT Toppin, especially if he's going to dive out of a screen, because he's such an offensive rebounder and Houston was putting 2 on the ball, as soon as that big contest, it's now a mismatch on offensive glass, and he's going to walk whoever down and get to the rim, and that was another and one, right? And so, I think he is an absolutely phenomenal collegiate player. He's someone that, again, here's Christian Anderson unable to create an advantage against the hedge. He's going to give it to JT Toppin. They're going to rescreen. Again, Anderson doesn't want anything to do with that hedge. He's going to give it to Toppin here, and he drives it, but come on, man. That's I can't. That's
28% career free throw rate for Toppin.
Yeah, and which is crazy for the offensive rebounding. But he also has this. He's a jump hook guy. He's not a finish at the rim, so I think that's probably a part of it as well. And then there was moments where I was okay, the passing looked kind of good here, but again, he's going to drive himself into an issue here. But when the ball is going to get swung, Christian, and I think they're going to swing it back to Anderson. Anderson's going to get it to Toppin on the post up. He's got a mismatch, and that bullet skip. Okay, that's good to see. But then he's going to drive here again, where he wasn't able to face up immediately. He's driving where he's going to have to drive in the NBA, or because he's not going to shoot. So they run that DHO. He's going to walk down this mismatch, and here comes the help, and it's just that's nasty.
Brutal.
Yeah. So I think the case for him as an NBA player is pretty much DOA. But I think I can't knock the productivity too much. I just think if you're going to be functionally a 4 in today's NBA, who's offensively tilted, you got to put the ball on the floor, you got to shoot, and he's not doing either. And that's just kind of not a guy to want to bet on.
Yeah, and we talked about it. I feel we talked about it with a lot of dudes. In that kind of Josh Jefferson, for example, who are conventionally known as tweeners, where it's all right, if you're not going to shoot, you have to. It's a sliding scale. You got to be able to compensate in other areas. In Jefferson's case, he's just one of the best playmakers, processors you'll see in that kind of tweener mold, and it gives us a lot of confidence in how he'll translate. JT Toppin, again, never been over 1 assist to turnover in his career, and the production has improved, but in areas that he was already strong in. He's always been a good offensive rebounder, and that continues to improve. He's always had touch on that hook that's continued to improve. But from the free throw line, this is the worst. He has a lower true shooting than he does effective field goal percentage this year.
That's so crazy.
He's shooting 50% from the line, man. And it's just something he doesn't meet the cognitive threshold that you want to see from those kind of spacing limited fours. He obviously hasn't started shooting yet. I agree with you, man. It's looking kind of bleak for his NBA prospects. It definitely looks like he's coming back for another year of school.
Yeah, and he'll dominate again. I think that's just the limitations of what the threshold is in the NBA. But let's wrap up with Flemings, man. I think we've got people on TikTok there. They're talking about Flemings. He's definitely got it. Like I'm seeing top 5 in the chat, things like that. So this performance in particular, I sort of, I have on my site, I calculate, how good of a performance a guy has, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Fleming's score on that night was second behind Wagler. But considering the defensive coverage face, the turnover version, the shot diet, how he was able to attack mismatches, I think he had the most impressive performance.
Yeah, and I don't want to go too long on this. I kind of just consolidated a lot of what I put in a thread on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it already. But consolidated that to here. Yeah, man, I think what we saw was real development. Again, being able to standardize at least, or having the control of the opponent. It's 2 games against Texas Tech, about I think it was 2.5 weeks apart. And you get to see a lot of the same actions. You get to see Texas Tech vary a little bit how they guard Flemings, and Kingston just responded. And this is from the first game. You see he's just not comfortable shooting off the bounce yet. And you see here hedged, and they were hedging a lot again in this past game, the game over the weekend. And JT Toppin's recovering. He swings and gets it back, tacks off the catch, settles. And that you just want to be a catch and shoot 3. That's a fairly unacceptable process. But this exact same action virtually. This is just 77 shallow. You have, I think this is Chase McCarty. It's a little zoomed out angle, so I'm not. No, it's Chase McCarty. Setting the initial screen. You have Sacco, the big, kind of cutting out behind him. I mentioned it a million times by now, but yeah, they just want to clear out this wing for Kingston to get to his right hand. And I think, do they switch the initial screen? No, they hedge. And Kingston, leveraging his speed, leveraging the rim pressure he could have, sets up this step back 3. Doesn't hit it, but incredible process. Love to see that.
And the hesitation too against the hedge, right? Like it's the hang dribble as that hedge comes. As soon as he retreats, now I'm going to attack that outside edge and get to my spot. I think it's, to your point, like that type of in-season development is incredible.
Yeah. And then I think a similar action, double ball screens, shallow cutting with JoJo Tugler, very funny, but I think they got the switch here. And then he just sets up, again, another off the dribble 3. Misses, but we're judging process here, process over results. And I'm trying to remember what this was. This is out. This is horns out and then to Knicks, or like a step up screen. Hold on. And Kingston being guarded by Donovan Atwell. They show, and then that just beat he takes right there. Freeze the defender, and then set up that pocket of space to take off the dribble 3. He just was not doing that at all. And I had a couple charts. I wanted to minimize the charts this time around, but I feel like it was necessary. So this is from the first game they played, okay? And he took, I want to say this was, I'm not going to count it all, but the majority of his shots were it was 2 rim attempts to 8 pull-ups. And you look at all of these shot attempts, where they are, especially these long mid-range jumpers up here in and around the free throw line, extended elbow area. That can't be the foundation of your offense as a point guard, as a 6'4" guy that plans on having the ball in his hands a ton. That is just putting your offense in a position suspect to being, dead on arrival in the league. But you go to the next game. How much do I got to fast forward? You go to the next game, and then whoa. And then look, this is a totally different picture. Virtually still in the mid range. I kind of think this is going to be baked into his game, honestly. Like there's only so much that his handle will develop, and I think the rim pressure will improve. But he's always going to use that counter, and you kind of need that counter as like a high usage guy, honestly. Something that we talked about a
100%.
lot with Dylan Harper this past year. But all these threes, all these off the dribble threes, all these long threes, going to be critical for him in the future. And I think a big reason, man, is it marks the full shift, the change in how Houston was going to use their guards. Kingston got the keys in this game. You see the first game against Texas Tech, 7 pick and roll ball handling reps. This game, 16 pick and roll ball handling reps. Like it was helio ball. This is number one. This is our entire offense. We're living and dying with this guy, Milos Uzan, pick and roll reps cut in half, down to 3 in the second game. Lowest usage game of the season, 10% usage. They just relegated to a role player essentially. And then you see Kingston, and I think it's because Kingston, a lot of what drives his pull up is he hates shooting off the catch. It's just some guys don't have that discomfort. Half of his threes are off the dribble, and initially I thought that was primarily due to Houston having a very kind of stagnant, deliberate offense where they play a ton in the half court, really slow-paced team. But he just isn't comfortable, man. He has these times, they hedge here, but still not nearly as patient. He's looking to get to his spots. And then attacking closeouts here, you see he's off the ball, spacing behind. He fills in behind Milos Uzan pretty well, but is just not filling in. He's filling in behind the drive, but he's filling in not to drive, to take a step back. And on Jalen Petty, a 5'11 guard, you just don't want to see that. And these are all from the first game. This was his process. So many mid-range numbers. And this was something. So Kingston's drive rate, which drives are distinct in synergy for those of y'all who don't have synergies. Drives totally distinct from pick and roll reps. And you see all these guards. You take someone like LeBaron Fallon, look at the split between his drive rate and pick and roll rate. Yeah. This is screen man. The majority of these guys, yes, the majority of these guys are screen man. I went back for these were first round, a lot of one and done guards. Blake Wesley, screen man split. Jalen Suggs, screen man split. Then you see that Suggs has those handle concerns in the league, you know?
Yeah.
And his first season offensively was what? It's bad. And then this one, I got to minimize this so y'all can actually see. But maybe not. Maybe I just got to hope. But at the very bottom, you have Tyrese Maxey, who, again, close pick and roll rate. Actually, a higher drive rate than pick and roll rate. Kingston, Flemings, and Maxey, the only guys with drive rates higher than their pick and roll rate. This was before the previous game, though. Now Kingston has a slightly higher pick and roll rate than drive rate. But just showing, again, that utility on and off ball. Another guy, very close split between his pick and roll and drive rate, Deuce McBride, a guy who's earned his keep as an off-ball guard. And that's my appeal. I was in a space talking to Finn about it for a while. I think what gets under discussed with Kingston, and again, these guys, Deuce, Tyrese, Kingston, low free throw rates. It's just harder for these guys to generate deep paint touches off the catch because, I mean, they're skinnier. They're getting bumped off their drive line, something you mentioned with LeBaron. But anyway, something I mentioned to Finn about Kingston, I think something gets underrated with him is, dude, there's a lot of juice with him being an off-ball guy. I mean, almost a 2-block rate. He's a crazy vertical athlete. He's 6'4". He's not small. And then obviously he has all the ancillaries. He rebounds really well. A lot of the limitations, like the free throw rate, are going to keep him from being an elite point guard. But having that kind of playmaking juice off ball is, I think, a cheat code, honestly. And you look at like the Celtics when they won a few years back, for all intents and purposes, I'd say Derek White and Drew Holiday, those guys were playing as wings, you know? Mm. And I think that's an avenue Kingston could, that's a like expected value. That's how he could shoot past it for his current production mold. Is I think he's going to be able to play with other guards, other initiators. But anyway, continuing with Kingston, and again looking at rim to non-rim, it's been bad, but relative to previous Houston guards, way better than what you'd expect. He is literally the only, so average rim to non-rim, so like your ratio of rim attempts to floaters, pull-ups, was exceeded 1 for it. I looked at this in Bart era all the way down back to 2010. It went over 1 on average for point guards and combo guards in 2016. Houston's only had 1 guard with meaningful usage over 1 rim to non-rim, and that was Kingston Flemings. And you look at this; these guys are living in the mid-range, living off floaters, not even necessarily bad athletes. Although a lot of them are, but guys like Jamal Shead's a great athlete. It's just a tough environment to get to touch paint. But
where was Grimes? Do you know?
Grimes. So I did it for players. I think it was 6'4" was the cutoff line and shorter.
Gotcha.
Grimes, again, a really horrible rim to non-rim. He was low 40s on 2-pointers in Houston. It's just, again, Grimes, he's not killing it as a driver in the league, but these are effective. These are ankle weights, for rim attempts, for paint touches. And what Kingston's done in the meantime has been, and a reason he's been able to juice that rim to non-rim is he is just the best transition player in the class. I think bar none. I don't think it's like particularly close. And off ball in the first game, he's a little, again, attacking closeout's not his strength. You see, he throws that pass a little early, but here in transition, leading it, very obvious, very apparent that Houston gave him the directive, dude, get downhill, attack in semi-transition. This is the fastest a Houston team's played basically in the Sampson era. This is the lowest. This is the not slowest, the lowest offensive average possession length they've had since 2017. Like, they haven't been able to create advantages this quick really since Samp's been there. And that's because they did not have a guy like this who Kingston, dude, he was abusing these Texas Tech point of attack defenders. And this is a little sped up. This is not actually. And then you see early transition. Donovan Atwell just gets downhill quickly. And this is just more pick and roll ball handling growth. This is just them running Ram, which is, I'll rewind a little bit, but Ram pick and roll, which is a down screen. You see Emmanuel Sharp set here for a ball screen. Chris Sinak, he gets a switch, and Kingston just isn't comfortable, man. He's not comfortable with his handle yet, getting downhill. He's cross-matched with Malik Ewan, who's mobile, but he should be able to touch paint there. And then they're running Ram as the season progresses. Again, immediately, decisively, getting downhill. And this is a bad – I think they meant to switch this ball screen.
Yeah, bad coverage.
Yeah, this is a bad coverage, but again, no Houston player at least, and maybe no guard in this class is as capable as generating rim assists as Kingston. And he doesn't have the highest rim assists per 40 in this class, but I would say that there's not a player more capable as like a backline manipulator, varying these deliveries than Kingston. You see here what is happening. What is he going to do? He's going to hit Chris Sinak on this cut. And what he's done for guys like JoJo Tugler's rim percentage is nearly 10% higher than it's been in his career.
Great.
Chris Sinak is dunking all of his rim attempts because they're getting clean looks at the front of the rim because of this guy. You see just it's in the air, bounce pass, easy. And then this is my favorite. Another Ram pick and roll. Gets downhill, and then that brief little, again, pace being the operative term here, that brief little hesitation here on JT Toppin, who's kind of almost in like a shallow drop, freezes him, and then gets a clean inside hand finish. And that's really all what I wanted, just the growth. And I watched those games pretty close to back. And yes, I see Joe mention, Houston always 90th percentile or above in floater rate. Definitely built into the scheme. They want to put those attempts on they want to get those mid-range attempts to juice their offensive rebound, and that's kind of the foundation of their offense. But it's also just a product of the personnel, man. They don't have a lot of spacing talent on the floor because they want to play aggressive defense, they want to crash glass, and they want to just beat teams to a pulp. And this is the first time they've had a guy who can really just juice transition frequency. Houston's transition frequency versus top 220 teams is 40% with Kingston on the floor, and then Kingston off, it goes to 17%. So it's talking about the fifth factor, man.
Yeah.
Like what he does in transition. And what's crazy about that, Houston's still in the second percentile in adjusted tempo. They don't have a lot of these transition opportunities. I think when Kingston gets to the league, what he's going to do as an open court playmaker is going to be it's going to be special. I think he has the potential to be like have a special influence on his team.
What's crazy is your point about the pick and roll frequency versus the drive frequency, right? It's the same thing in transition. 60% as a handler, 40% off the ball, and he's still at like the of course there's higher volume as a ball handler in the composite as opposed to like the composite off the ball, but he's still at like almost 1.5 points per possession in transition. And he's a lot of fun. Like just honestly, just a lot of fun to watch. I also wanted to talk about couple questions we had before we wrap up.
For sure.
Gigi Jackson says, does Kingston project to be the best guard playmaker ever over Halliburton, Trey, Chris Paul, etc.?
I can't get there because, again, you can't playmaking like holistically. You got to incorporate the scoring as well. Kingston may be the highest feel of the group. He may be as a freshman the best in a vacuum passer, but he definitely doesn't have the scoring juice of a really Trey or Halliburton. Chris Paul, man, he was 60 free throw rate in college. Like he was touching paint consistently. Kingston's probably playmaking, including everything, probably the worst of that group.
Yeah. But also when you consider the context too, like you mentioned what he's done for Tugler, what he's done for Sinak, these are guys who would be negative efficiency guys if they were with any other guard besides, any other guard in this class, but also like if they weren't with the Halliburton, if they weren't with the Trey, we weren't with Chris Paul. So I think that also speaks to what a level of offensive influence guy he is because of what he's been able to manufacture for these severely limited offensive players in a non-conducive context where you kind of almost, not to say they would fail or Samson has a bad scheme, but it's just they're so defensively slanted that any modicum of offensive, heliocentrism is a major testament to Kingston Fleming. I'm there with you. I don't think this is one of the best guard playmakers ever, but I do think the variety of the playmaking, the different delivery angles, the burst off the dribble, the athleticism, the in-between game is a unique combination. And you talked about this in one of our very first episodes. This is not an archetype we've seen, but this is like one of the best cases of an outlier for a guard you could really come up with.
For sure, man. For sure. And yeah, dude, we went long again. No other way I want to spend my time though, chopping up tape, chopping up the draft with D Lee. But do you have any other thoughts before we get out of here?
No, man, don't have any thoughts. Definitely appreciate everyone tuning in as we try this multi-platform stuff. Definitely make sure you check out the show. We're on Apple Podcasts, any podcast platform, the Fifth Factor Show. We're on YouTube. Ahmed and I will always be talking on the draft on our respective platforms as well, and all of that will be linked in the description.
Yes, sir.
All right, y'all be safe. Appreciate y'all joining, and we'll see you in the next one.